I'm back with another news video. Unfortunately, the news continues to get worse. AMD price increases confirmed for midnight tonight. However, that's talking about CPUs, not the rumored GPU price increases, which we now have more information on specific dollar amounts. And just general PC manufacturers are saying that prices could increase by 20% on next year's models. Also, is there a 9850 X3D? Is AMD outselling NVIDIA? Well, that's what's happening at one particular retailer, but we also do have the newest John Petty research, which seems to be telling another story, and we have some interesting updates on the latest Steam hardware survey. But let's circle back around to this. All my sources will be linked in the video description. This is coming from Overclocked or Overclock 3D. I'm not actually sure how you're supposed to pronounce it. Anyway, so AMD price increases confirmed for midnight tonight. Now, by confirmed, they mean they have confirmed via industry sources and don't go into any more detail than that. Now, it's perfectly normal for people working in tech media to have contacts within retailers, board partners, distributors, etc., and be able to get this kind of information. But of course, this is hardly an official announcement published by AMD. But the claim is that AMD has informed its partners of a new price increase for its products, which will take place at midnight tonight, December 1st. However, that's going to be taking place at the distributor level, which means that you, the end buyer, buying from a store, it would be more like once that store has sold out of its current inventory and it gets new shipments in, those new shipments will cost the store more, so that price will, of course, go on to you, the customer, and not affect the margins of any of the businesses involved. So that's the idea here. But again, they're claiming that this is not about the memory prices and it's not the upcoming GPU price hike. They are specifically saying that it's AMD's CPUs that will see price increases, affecting both 9000 series processors and older products that are still being shipped out new to distributors. But they don't know, they're claiming they don't know why this is happening, just that it is happening. So other than that's all we've got. It's bad news if it's true. We don't know if it's true. They're claiming that, again, it's coming from inside sources. Again, don't know the credibility of that. And they're saying that they'll be trying to mask the price increase as just a return to normal following Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals. So when you see prices go back up, that you won't assume that AMD raised pricing in the background, that it's just, the sales are over. So they're saying that that will be that'll be masking the price increases behind the scenes. So again, rumors, so make of it what you will, but certainly doesn't sound good. Now, what about those rumored GPU price increases, which are rumored to be due to the increase in memory pricing? I did a video yesterday with a lot more details on the memory pricing increases and a time frame, as discussed by memory manufacturers like Samsung and SK Hynix, who have said that they're not wanting to expand production, which means that supply is not going to keep up with demand. Prices will remain high, and they will continually increase pricing, and only offer short-term contracts. And again, why are they not increasing that supply? I did mention this in the last video, but I think some people were missing it. It's not necessarily a pure greed move. You could certainly interpret it that way. But if they expand production and then the AI boom actually turns into a bust and they just spend a bunch of investment on expanding capacity, then they get caught with the bag when prices drop and they just made that investment increasing production. And this has happened to the memory market cyclically over time, numerous times. So it is certainly possible that they're just trying not to get in that boom and bust cycle again. But regardless of how you interpret that, whether you view them as the bad guys or not, it's certainly still the case that they are going on record as saying they are not trying to dramatically extend production, so that they are expecting memory prices to be terrible at least through 2027, if not 2028. And that's just the reality of where we're at. So that's what's probably causing these GPU price increases, and we now have a dollar amount. So AMD is reportedly raising Radeon 8GB GPUs by $20 and 16GB GPUs by $40. And again, AMD is selling that on to board partners, and then it would be up to the board partners to see how much or more they increase their pricing to the end customer. So in other words, you wouldn't necessarily expect exactly this dollar amount increase to the end customer, because I think this is what AMD is going to be additionally charging the board partners. Now, I found this at videocards.com, but where are they getting the information from? This is from Board Channels. Now, Board Channels, again, gets a lot of things right, but it's kind of a forum where people are posting information, again, from within those like board partner type industry sources. But again, each source could be different. Is it accurate? We don't know, but there have been so many rumors on this price increase that this certainly makes sense. This is extremely plausible. The direct quote from Board Channels is that AMD has officially announced a price increase for its graphics cards, with a significant increase expected this year. It is reported that several AMD graphics card brands have officially notified their channels to prepare inventory. The first wave of price increases will be $20 for 8GB and $40 for 16GB, with an estimated overall increase of around 300 RMB for 8GB and 600 RMB for 16GB by the end of the year. No new products will be launched throughout 2027. Now, that's also a really interesting last statement right here. No new products will be launched throughout 2027, not just 2026, because I think it's somewhat reasonable to expect no new GPUs in 2026. But if we're on normal 2-year cycles, I would expect one in 2027. Now, is there a translation difference here on what we mean by throughout 2027? Or did they mean 2026? So that's certainly an interesting statement, because if it's true, it would indicate that at least board partners don't have knowledge, or are even saying that they do have knowledge that the roadmap does not include a new GPU launch in 2027. Man, if we have to wait till 2028 for another GPU generation, that's certainly a long wait. But I mean, if they can't offer better performance per dollar because prices going up, etc., then it might make sense why we wouldn't expect that. Also, AMD is rumored to be having like a huge technological overhaul on their next generation, getting ready for way stronger ray tracing, way stronger machine learning performance, and kind of lining up with the next generation of PlayStation. So yeah, we'll have to see how all of that goes. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if memory prices are still high by 2027, if we'll also maybe not see, the PS6 generation coming in yet. Because if they can't launch it at a price they think it'll sell, Now, all of this depends on, will the AI data center expansions slow down? Will there be a bust in that cycle? We'll have to just wait and see what happens. But again, this is the situation as it looks right now. And again, it looks like it's not just memory pricing that is going to be going up. It's going to be PCs in general. So if you're buying pre-built systems, laptops, etc., I found this article at WCCF Tech saying, headline, PC manufacturers are helpless with memory shortages as a supply chain source claims that newer products will be much more expensive. Again, supply chain sources. So a lot of places claim sources within board partners, supply chains, distributors, etc., who do have knowledge on these things, but again, it's hard to rank the credibility of these individual sources when the exact source that the website is citing won't be named because it's not supposed to be public information. Now, what is the direct quote? Well, WCCF Tech actually got this from a Korean outlet, ZDNet, and here's what they have. And again, they're claiming automatic translation from this. So, always the caveat of any potential translation issues or anything. But their quote is, PC manufacturers react sensitively even if the cost of production increases by just 1 cent. Even if they try to reduce it by just a few cents, if the cost of production increases by tens of dollars at once, they will naturally incur a loss. In particular, the supply prices of core laptop components, such as processors like CPUs and batteries, as well as memory and SSDs, have increased. We have no choice but to raise the prices of new products coming out next year by at least 20%. And quickly discontinue existing products. So again, this is, insider sources. You have to, take that with its grain of salt. But if we do, this all does sound plausible. They're expecting next year's models to be 20% more expensive, at least. And the current gen models, once they're sold out, quickly discontinued. So they want to quickly get rid of the current inventory and launch new products at higher prices because they're claiming that it's not just memory costs going up. Memory and SSDs are going up, but they're also claiming things like CPUs and batteries are going up. Well, they're claiming CPU pricing is going up. Now, that doesn't have to be AMD, but remember we started here with AMD claiming that, sources claiming that AMD is increasing CPU pricing. Now, it's a little different when it's the business-to-business stuff for the PC manufacturers, but this all sounds like corroborating evidence of the same kind of situation. And they're saying that battery pricing is also going up. Sounds like a lot of things are getting more expensive here. So none of this looks particularly great. Now, is there anything interesting or exciting to report on in the PC hardware news? AMD, launched is the headline here at PC Gamer, but more on that in a second. The Ryzen 7 9850X3D with zero fanfare. Now, what do they mean by launched? So there had been rumors of a 9850X3D incoming previously, but AMD actually did list it on one of their driver pages. Now, when I checked recently, I couldn't find that link working, so I think they've taken it down, and it was on the French version, I believe, of the AMD driver page. So, was it posted by a mistake? Not likely. It's more likely that if they posted something, it's because there is some kind of product being worked on. Now, if it's being worked on, that's not the same thing as it will be launched. They could work on something that they choose not to launch. And do we know anything else about it? Well, all we know from AMD is that it was listed under this name on a driver page. That's all of the official information that we have. So if you're looking at outlets who are giving you specs on the 9850X3D, it's important to understand their source for that is leakers, rumors, stuff, not the same thing as the AMD driver page. So to my understanding, I have not seen evidence that the AMD driver page listed specific specifications for the 9850X3D. Now, the rumored specs, which were posted on Twitter by Chilled Dog, said that it would have 120 watt TDP, 8 cores, 16 thread, 96 megabytes of L3 cache, and a boost clock speed of 5.6 gigahertz. So really, that's just the same thing as what we have from the 9800X3D, except for the boost clock speeds are increased by 400 megahertz. So what this sounds like, if it indeed is real, is that this isn't really a change in technology. This is just a 9800X3D that has been binned to be able to hit these higher clock speeds. So AMD has been producing the 9800X3Ds long enough that if they have been holding back the golden samples that could boost 400 megahertz higher reliably, for the purpose of eventually releasing a, even faster version, then that's what this sounds like. So I think that if we do indeed get this launched, that's what this is. And it sounds like AMD, the fact that they posted it on their page and we had seen previous rumors, there's starting to be a lot of corroborating evidence that this is probably coming. But again, AMD could just not end up launching it, right? This wasn't really launched in the sense that you would think of the word as launched. It was mentioned on a particular driver page, and that's about it. Now, the other thing I want to mention is every time this Tech Epiphany posts the Mind Factory retail sales numbers, we always see a bunch of reactions on Reddit and things like that saying that AMD is outselling NVIDIA's 50 series. And so it's really important, especially because I teach at least basic statistics sometimes, to understand sample bias, right? This is giving you information about a particular retailer. And only that particular retailer. There's no reason to believe that the results of this particular retailer would actually, represent the entire market. So that's important. Now, that doesn't mean it's not interesting to look. So at least at MindFactory, it does look like AMD GPUs are outselling NVIDIA with 1,880 units sold. Versus 940 units sold, so about 66% versus 33%. Now, NVIDIA has the higher average sale price at $733 versus AMD's $527. And Intel coming in with 30 units sold, basically 1%, and an average sale price of $245. Now, revenue-wise, so when you adjust for the average sales price, that puts it at closer to an even split, but AMD still ahead at about 59% versus 41%, and Intel at less than 0.5% of the actual revenue. But again, this is just from MindFactory. But it is interesting to see that the 9070 XT selling about 1,000 units actually outsold the entire 50 series combined at this one particular retailer. But I keep seeing posts and comments of people trying to extrapolate this beyond what is appropriate. This is telling you the sales figures of this one particular store at this one particular piece of, a period of time. Now, John Petty Research has also recently published results for Q3 2025. And this tells a very different story, which makes me believe that MindFactory is more of an outlier. And I would expect that even if there are errors in John Petty Research's results, that this is probably closer to the reality of the situation. So they're claiming that market share-wise, and they're talking AIB market share, so AIB board partner shipments, they're showing that Q3 2025, AMD has increased, and so has Intel. Intel's gone from rounding down to 0% to increasing to 1% of market share, and AMD has increased from 6% to 7%, and NVIDIA has decreased from 94% to 92%. But that still is showing AMD behind where they were at in Q3 2024, where they had 10% of the market. Again, as tracked by John Petty Research. Now, again, statistics, gathering samples, it's only as good as your sampling information and all of that. And it's possible that John Petty Research also doesn't have a complete picture of everything down to the exact unit. But I would expect that their results are much more representative of the truth than what we're seeing from the MindFactory results. Anyway, so this is what we're seeing here. Now, the other place where people like to talk about this kind of split is the Steam hardware survey. And since the month just ticked over, we did just get the latest results. But it's also important, again, when we're on the topic of like statistics, what do these mean? How do you compare them? I also see a lot of people misunderstand the Steam hardware survey. Not only just people who complain about its accuracy, but I think some people just misunderstand what this is representing compared to what something like this is representing. When we say, when John Petty Research is saying that for Q3 2025, NVIDIA had 92%, they're talking about new AIB shipments in that quarter, new sales, new shipments. Whereas when you're looking at the Steam hardware survey, we're talking about total install base of Steam users. And that's a different thing because most Steam users didn't buy a new graphics card in Q3 of 2025. Most of them still have an old one. Only a small percentage actually bought something new. So that's why the Steam hardware survey would likely have very different results than the overall, shipment numbers, right? Because this is market share by shipments in a particular quarter. whereas this is measuring total install base of Steam users. And then some people bring up like, but not everybody takes the Steam hardware survey, so doesn't that have bias in the sample? You only need statistically a very small sample, as long as it's a truly random sample, to actually give you a very accurate picture of the total population. So the total population of Steam users can be inferred from a small sample, as long as that sample is truly random. Now, the Steam hardware survey is opt-in, so you do have to agree to it. So you would have to decide, do you feel like NVIDIA users are more likely to opt in than AMD users or Intel users? I personally don't see why that would be the case, but that would be the only thing that would be causing issues with that sample. Now, the other issue that I have that people bring up, I see in comments on this and things like that, is people talk about the issue with like, in Asia, there's big PC cafes where you might have hundreds of different users logging into the same gaming PC that has the same NVIDIA GPU in it. So that then overrepresents that one GPU in the sample. And that's actually a good point. Now, I would question how much gaming cafes would be skewing the overall results, but what that doesn't do is give an inaccurate count of Steam users. Because if those Steam users are using that same NVIDIA GPU, it's giving you an accurate count of what Steam users are playing games on. So the Steam hardware survey is designed to tell you what proportion of Steam users are using what type of hardware, which doesn't mean that some of them aren't sharing hardware at a gaming cafe or if multiple family members use the same PC. It's not designed to do that because that's not the purpose. The purpose of the Steam hardware survey is for Steam and game manufacturers, etc., to get an idea of what are people using to play games on Steam. They don't care if it's counting the same GPU more than once. Whereas on something like John Petty Research, they're trying to track the number of sales of hardware. So again, these are measuring slightly different things, in addition to just the like quarterly versus total install base, right? But both the Steam hardware survey and the John Petty Research are likely to be much more representative than just an individual retailer in a particular market region. Anyway, now is anything interesting in the Steam hardware survey this particular month? I would say yes, we've seen some interesting changes. One of them is that the 9070 is actually showing up now, but not in the all video cards list. So I'm not seeing the 9070 if I control F in this list. So we're still seeing NVIDIA GPUs dominating the top of the charts here. And we've seen the 5070 moving up pretty considerably. It's one of the larger gains this particular month for the November results. And it's now, and it is the most popular 50 series GPU. That's kind of interesting because in most generations, the 60 class card has been the most popular. The most popular GPU on the Steam survey right now is the 4060 laptop GPU. That's number one. And then the 3060 is number two, and then the 4060 non-laptop version is number three. So again, we usually see 60 class cards be the most popular for their generation. Also, the fact that a laptop GPU is number one, I think another thing people need to remember is when you're looking at something like sales at a place where you're buying individual cards to build your own gaming PC, not very representative of the overall market, where a lot of people buy pre-built systems, laptops and pre-built desktops. I think that's a much bigger part of the market, and that's where NVIDIA, I think, has that huge foothold. So I think the DIY market, where people buy individual components, I think AMD actually has a larger percentage than what shows up in like the Steam hardware survey. But when you look at laptops, those are dominated by NVIDIA GPUs. And on a lot of these listings, they don't separate out the laptop version from the non-laptop version. So that's, at least that's how it's been in the past. I'm not sure which models it separates it out and which it doesn't. But then there's the pre-built systems where people are just buying a pre-built. And again, I'm pretty confident that NVIDIA has the dominant market share in those pre-built systems. So you have to keep in mind, again, of the markets you're talking about, right? Anyway, so yeah, 5070's the top for the 50 series here. And again, I've seen a lot of people speculating that these AMD TM graphics might be hiding some of the 90 series cards. I mean, it's possible that that's the case. I think a lot of the integrated graphics report as these, and some people are saying that they have an integrated GPU that's stealing the survey sample from their 9000 series card. I would say that if that's happening, is that also happening for the NVIDIA users that have an integrated GPU? So I'm curious on that, like if that would be separate. But also here's why I don't think that at least that's always happening. I don't think that they're completely hidden here, because you actually can find AMD's 9000 series if you go to splitting by DX12, DX10, DX11, etc. If we go to this list, we actually can find the 9070 show up. So if I search for the 9070, it does show up on this list. So the Steam hardware survey is counting 9070s. Now I don't see anything listed as a 9070 XT, although the 9070 GRE does show up separately from the 9070. So I am curious if 9070s and 9070 XTs are being lumped together, or if the 9070s are just selling more than the XT versions. They are less expensive, so it would stand to reason that they might sell at higher numbers. Now, the 9070 shows up on the list for if you only look at Vulkan systems. So only looking at Vulkan systems, the 9070 shows up. But again, it's way below a lot of these other things. It's coming in at 0.24. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. 0.24% of the market, which is a small 0.02% gain from the previous month. So it is showing climbing slowly month by month, and it is on this list. Now, also the 9070 GRE, like I said, shows up at 0.04%. And then the 9070 shows up again when we sort by other things. So again, there's sorting by Vulkan, but you can also sort by DX12 systems. So this is looking at Windows 10 with DX12. So if you look at just Windows 10 with DX12, then you can scroll down and again find the 9070 listed. But it's showing up as 0.13%, which again is climbing. It's showing an increase month by month here, 0.09, 0.10, 0.12, 0.11, 0.13. So it is climbing, it is here. So this is one of the reasons why I don't necessarily buy into the theory I see posted all over Reddit and the comment sections every time the Steam hardware survey comes out and says that the 9070s are hidden under the Radeon TM graphics. I mean, it's certainly plausible that some of them are there if the integrated GPU is getting detected as the main GPU by accident. But the 9070s are making the list. They're just not making the main GPU list of all video cards. And I think that might make sense because if you scroll down, the lowest percentage that gets listed, if we go by all GPUs, the lowest percentage that gets listed looks like 0.16%. And if we look at sorting by the DX12, where we saw that show up, which again, it's a slightly different list, but where we saw that show up for the DX12 list, it was coming in, again, in Vulkan, it's coming in above that. But on the DX12 list, which I think would be closer to the main list, I've got to go down pretty far to get here. We're seeing it come in at 0.13%, which is just too small of a percentage to show up on that main list. Anyway, so that's that. It's also interesting to look at VRAM capacity and things like that. And AMD versus Intel in the CPU segment. You can see that Intel has been on a steady decline, with AMD increasing their market share at Intel's expense for CPUs every single month. It just continues to trend that direction. We're seeing that the VRAM capacity is still mostly 8 gigabytes as the most popular. If we break that down, we can see that 8 gigabytes is by far the largest percentage at 33.36%, with 6 gigabytes still making up a pretty sizable 10.2%, but they are declining. So they're declining while 12 gigabytes has been increasing. And remember, we've seen a increase in 5070s considerably this month, so that makes sense. And we're also seeing 16 gigabytes increasing quite a bit as well. But still, the 12 and 16 gigabyte makes up less combined than just 8 gigabyte GPUs. So when you look at what are people actually using in their systems, it is certainly important for game manufacturers, game designers, game developers, publishers, etc., to make sure that games are optimized in a way where at reasonable settings they're functionable on GPUs like this, at least if they want to sell big numbers on PC. Because while 12 and up is climbing, it's still, that's still under 30% at 12 and 16. So interesting stuff, especially as VRAM gets more expensive. I've probably rambled on enough for today. Hopefully you guys found all the statistics discussion interesting and or useful, because it is important to remember what is each of these things sampling, what does it represent, how is that survey conducted, when you're trying to have reasonable conversations about this information and what it's telling you. I hope all of you have an excellent day, despite the somewhat negative PC news.